Plywood repair. How would you go about repairing the kind of impact damage that we can see here? Well, the first thing is to assess how far the damage has extended, because you really want to make sure that you've repaired the full extent of the damage. And this impact area looks fairly small, but when you look on the back face of the plywood, you can see that there's further damage to the inside veneers. We have a number of ways of conducting these repairs. Using epoxy resin hardener mix, of course, is paramount to success here. But the preparation is very, very similar for plywood as it is for a glass fibre repair. And that's to create a bevel around the area of damage. And the bevel that we use with timber is an 8:1 bevel, as opposed to the 12:1 minimum bevel that we suggest for GRP repairs. So by using an angle grinder here and using the contours of the different laminates of the plywood, we can get a good idea of that bevel. And you can see here there's a corresponding beveled infill piece, in fact so thin that the veneer has started to break. Now we would employ two-step bonding techniques here, where we brush both the face of the plant that's going in and the surface of the damage with our resin hardener mix, allowing that to wick in, and that will really wick into plywood very, very nicely, before we then bonding that in with a thickened resin hardener mix and then stapling this in place, or perhaps pinning it in place, or even perhaps using sticky tape to hold it in place. Bear in mind that epoxy resin hardener mix has terrific gap filling qualities, and it's completely structural, and this will affect a very, very sturdy repair. Once the repair is completed, it's possible then to add glass fabric over here and finish the repair off. And if you want further information on that, look at our other videos. The other method of repair, and this method may have a little bit more precision, it's the acceptable method of repairing a plywood finish where there's a clear varnish coating over the surface, so you actually visually see the repair. And this type of repair is acceptable to see. It's a piece of damage that unfortunately you will visually see. But if it's done very neatly, the joint around here is quite fine. And we call this repair a letterbox repair, because quite simply it's a shape that fills in the damage, put onto a backing plate, and then popped through the aperture, and then with a piece of string on this screw located in place, and then simply screwed in place to secure it. Now this type of repair is a little bit more specialist, it's a little bit more refined than this, but if you wanted a clear finish repair, this is a very, very sound way of repairing. And we simply screw that back in place. And of course, this just illustrates techniques. We would want to do this with a thickened resin hardener mix, certainly using two-step bonding to provide best practice results. And of course, with this type of repair, it's quite feasible, once the epoxy bonding the repair in place has cured, to remove all these screws and refill the holes with thickened epoxy. You can look at this type of repair in our wooden boat restoration manual. This type of repair is done professionally on small dinghies, right the way through to plywood constructed cruisers. But both very, very robust means of repairing plywood.